In this tutorial, we are going to learn how to create a table in an SQLite database using the SQLite ADO.NET data providers. And one thing that I want you to know is that by default, the .NET framework does not come with the SQLite ADO.NET data provider libraries, and therefore you have to download them manually from the SQLite.org website and add them into your project. There is a video that I did on how to add the SQLite libraries into a project. Therefore, you can view that video and come back so that you can continue in case you do not know how to do that. So now I assume that you have added the SQLite libraries into your project, and therefore you are ready to code. And I will double click on this form design to expose the code view, and I will import the libraries into my code. I will say imports system.data, and I will also import system.data.SQLite. These are the references that I need for me to use the ADO.NET data providers for SQLite. I will also create a function, private function, and I will call it create table, and it's going to return a boolean. And what happens here is that I will wrap all the code that is going to be required for me to create the table in my SQLite database. So one of the things that I will do is to specify the connection string, and I will specify it in a variable which is called constring with the value of a string. And the connection string specifies a lot of values, and one of the attributes that we can specify on the connection string is the data source attribute. This specifies the name of the database and also the path where the database is located. And in case you want the database to be located on the root directory of the application, you won't need to specify the path. So here I will just specify the name of the database, which is contact.db, which is the file extension for the SQLite database. And also there is another attribute that I will specify, which is the version attribute. And as of this recording, version 3 is the latest version for the SQLite database. And also I will add another attribute called new, and I will supply the true value. The new attribute tells us that whenever our application is running and does not find the contact.db database, it should automatically create a new database. After we have done that, we'll have to create a connection object. So I'll say dim obj connection as new SQLite connection, and I will supply the connection string as the parameter for our connection object. And after we've done that, I will also create another variable that will hold the SQL statement for creating our table, and I'll name it SQL with the string data type. And here is where now I will write the statement on creating the table. So I will say create table if not exists, and I will also supply the table name. I will call it table contacts, and open the bracket. That's the curly bracket that I will open. And I will continue to add columns. I will add another column for ID, and I will specify the data type for the ID as integer, and I will say that it is not going to be null. It is the primary key, and it's going to auto increment. I will add another column, and I will name this column first name. First name. Then I will specify the data type to be of varchar, and the data size of 20, and I will also specify it that it can be null. I will also add another column, and I will call this column last name with a data type of varchar 20, and also it can be null. I will also specify another column and call it gender, and it's going also to have a data type of varchar 10, and I will also specify it to be null. I will also add another column, and I will call it phone, and I will also specify the varchar 20 null, and I will specify another column, our last column, and I will call it email with a varchar data type of maybe 50 characters, and also it can be null. Then I will close with a closing bracket. Now our data definition language for the table is complete, whereby we'll create the table and name it contacts, and it's going to have the ID, first name, last name, gender, phone, and email columns. And after we have done that, we need to create now the command object, which is going to be used to perform or execute the SQL statement that we have created. But before we create the command object, we need to open a connection to the database using the object connection that we actually created at the top here, object connection. So I will say if object connection dot state. We want to check the state of the connection at this point. Then we say connection state dot closed. Then we need to open the connection in case it's closed. After we've opened the connection, we'll create the command object, and we'll say dim object command as SQLite command, and we're going to supply two parameters, which is the SQL parameter and also the object connection or the connection object. Sorry, it has to be new SQLite command. Object connection. The next step after creating the command object is to run the command so that we can be able to execute the statement against the database. So I will say dim result as integer is equal to object command dot execute non query. The execute none query returns an integer, as we can see here, and we can capture the result and return it to the calling application. And after we've done that, we'll have to close the connection. It's a very precious resource, and we need to immediately close our database connection after we are done executing our commands. And after that, we'll have to set the objects to nothing so that it can be captured by the garbage collector. So I'll say object connection equals nothing, and also object command equals nothing. Then we will return the result here. Let's say, in fact, since it's an integer, we need to return an integer. So here we'll specify that it returns an integer. Now this is our complete code, and this is actually what we need for us to create a table in our SQLite database. And we'll also have to call this function on our form load event. So we'll say create table. That means that when the form loads, it needs to run this function and create the database if it is not available, and create the table inside our contact.db database. Now I want to take you to my SQLite project in the Visual Studio project files, and when I go to my debug bin folder, there is no the SQLite database in this folder. But when we run our application, it will detect that there is no any contact database and create a new one and create that table for us. So I will save this application and I will run. So we'll give it some time. The moment we see that the form appears, we'll know that everything went on fine and went on okay, and we'll be able to see our database that it was created. So now our form has appeared. That means everything went on okay. And if we go to the debug folder of our SQLite database project, we can see that there is the contact database file here. So that means everything went on okay, and that is how we create a table in the SQLite database using the ADO.NET. Thank you and welcome.